Right guys, I've got a good one for you now. So this is about keeping your cymbals clean and how to soften and mellow out the high end in your cymbals in a nice professional way. So what you'll notice with a lot of tracks, with a lot of samples, is a lot of cymbal samples are really sharp and aggressive and loud, and often they will disrupt your mix quite heavily if you don't sort of soften them first. And even if you don't soften them and they're kind of okay, like this one's sort of on the edge of needing a bit of softening. You know, it doesn't sound distorted as it is, but if you're running it through some drum group processing, because your cymbals are going to go into your drum group, and if you're then sort of saturating your drum group, like using the 23 hot cold or something like that, like at that point, then they've sort of become, you know, the cymbals have really sort of crossed over into being too distorted, you know. They start to have the transients are too sharp, and they start to be like harsh on the ears a little bit, you know. And that'll happen like really, really quickly with most cymbal samples. Like any amount of saturation on most cymbal samples will already put them into that over the edge kind of, you know, they'll already kind of push them in that zone where they start to be harsh on the ears, you know. Like it happens really quickly. So even when I distort put a saturation on my drum group here, like the kick and snare are kind of still fine, but the cymbals, they actually got distorted like kind of too much like already, you know. So we want to keep the cymbals nice and soft and treat the high end. So there's like 5 ways that you can, there's many ways you can do it, but I've just picked 5 ways which I do this kind of job, you know. And I can do it. I've got a bunch of different samples here to show you. So this one, it's a bit dirty as well, a bit muddy and a bit repetitive as well. This is actually from one of my sample packs. That one's like fairly clean. I'm not trying to just big up my sample pack. I think it's from the Neurofunk Toolbox, or I've only got 2 sample packs, but yeah, it's one of those. But in there, I've tried to make them like all the cymbal loops soft, so they don't have that. They're not like pushed too far, you know. But when you've got samples that you want to use that are just a bit too, like this one's a bit too much, you know. Or I've intentionally picked out cymbals that are kind of a bit too much. This one with a really, really loud transient on, and this one here, it's kind of alright. It has just a little bit of mud in it, you know. But how do we take those cymbals or those kind of samples that we want to use and soften them? So, for example, as I mentioned, there's 5 kind of ways that you could do it here. So number 1 is you could just shelf off some of the high end, you know. So that can often be a great way to do it. Just knock out some high end, and it'll already kind of soften it enough and clean it up like really well in a lot of cases. If you really pay attention to this loop here, it's really the transient that's just too loud. So that's the main thing with a lot of these cymbal loops, is you need, or cymbal kind of one shots as well, you need to take the transient off. Obviously you can tell how much it's really come off at 100%. You don't have to go that extreme, but around here though, you've softened it enough that it's kind of like knocked out a bit of volume, and it's made a bit of room for the kick and snare. And now, like, even with the saturation on the drum group, the cymbals sound clean now, you know? But yeah, even taking down some of the high end, like with the EQ, just knocking them a little bit further back in the mix, that's great as well. But yeah, there's other ways you can soften them, and here are some other ideas. So you can also use chorus. So we'll leave the transient shaper on for a minute because it really needs it on this one. But yeah, you can also then use chorus. It creates a natural kind of unison and pitch movement in the sample, and if you blend that in just right, and with the right amount of intensity or rate, you can use any chorus plugin really. They're often quite similar. You get slight different sound qualities between the plugins, but this one's fine as well. You sort of knock it to 35% or so. It's a subtle way to soften the cymbal group, you know, by putting this in this natural pitch movement, and it sort of phases out the sample a bit, like in a in a way where it's sort of just softening it, you know, not in a bad way. So that's one way you can also do it. Yeah, another way to go. So let's take this sample for example. Is another great thing you can do is put a pitch drift on, or like a tape emulation plugin. And this one specifically, the Baby Audio pitch drift, which is a free one, you hear it naturally knocks out a lot of high end. So you can control obviously the amount of kind of pitch movement you want and how fast it is. But if you notice, it really knocks out a lot of high end. It's kind of like you've done it's almost like you've done a high shelf, you know, cut on it, you know. It sounds a bit like it naturally does like a high shelf cut, which is quite nice because it's sort of coloured, you know. So it plays with the pitch a bit, gives you a bit of pitch variation and takes out the high end. So I like this plugin specifically to do that job where you want to knock some high end off in a natural way. That's quite nice to use that one. Another thing you can do, let's take this sample over here for example. Yeah, this one's really sharp. That, you know, that really needs transient shaping, that one. But once you've done that and you want to soften it further, another thing you can do is apply like a really tight reverb. Convolution reverb is great for that as well. So this is one of my favorites. It's the white blur 50 milliseconds. As you see, white blur 50 milliseconds on the kilohertz convolver. And it has this really short, tight, sweet, soft reverb sort of tail, you know. And if you blend that in, you know, it's not like you're giving a big lengthy reverb on, it's just you're softening the sound using it, you know. So you can soften it a bit with that. That's great as well. And then again, you know, if I wanted to, you know, take out some more high end or so, soften that one down nicely, you know. And similar for this last one here, same kind of job, you know, softening perhaps that loop with a bit of transient shaping, you know, a bit of EQing, taking out a bit of high end where I need, and then yeah, I mean maybe again having a bit of convolution on that one. And then, so that's those different kind of ways that you can soften the cymbals in your drum group to make them, you know, prepare them for, you know, a clean drum sound, because they need you'll quickly distort the cymbals if you don't do stuff like that, especially as I mentioned if you're going to apply like saturation or processing to the whole drum group as well, you know. So make sure you keep your cymbals clean. It's easier if you choose cymbals that are already clean sounding. You don't have to do too much work. Like I kind of already did that in my sample packs. I already sort of softened them all and put them down at that volume, so you don't need to do much to them. They're kind of good to go already. But when you're just picking out cymbals from anywhere, just make sure you don't choose super loud, sharp, distorted ones, because we don't want to hurt people's ears. And if they are leaning on that side of being a bit loud, turn them down a little bit and apply these things like high shelf EQing, bit of chorus, bit of pitch movement, or tape emulation with the pitch drift, for example, or add a bit of convolution reverb or a little bit of transient shape. Usually, more often than not, softening the transients on them as well is really going to help you out a lot. So that's like 5 ways you can soften and clean up your cymbals to make them nice and clean and ready for a powerful mix down that also has a nice clean polished high end, you know. All right, thank you very much for watching, my G's. That's it from me today. More from me very soon. Check out the links in my video as well. Firstly, leave us a comment, I really appreciate it, and like the video, helps to reach more people, and subscribe as well, and if you haven't already. And yeah, check out the links down below. I've got preset packs, one-on-one lessons, Patreon with a Discord, and mastering services available via email request. That's it for me today then. More for me soon. Much love. Goodbye.